Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccer Nostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview former goalkeeper, football data analyst, and writer, Mr. Daniel Campos. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog presentation on Marcelo Salas and his match versus England at Wembley on February 11, 1998. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shahan. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I think it's really cool actually to reminisce and look back at a particular date in February 1998 that brought back a South American side that was in the wilderness. So yeah, let's get started. Thank you.
Yes. Can you introduce yourself and your trajectory into football?
Well, first and foremost, you may notice from my accent, I'm a Sydney boy from Australia, and yeah, football. I mean, it comes part and parcel of your childhood if your mum and dad are South American. It's one of the first things you learn. You're walking in nappies and you learn how to kick a ball. Um, well, long story short, in Australia, I played throughout my youth in first and second division clubs over there, many of whom from my generation ended up playing for the Socceroos. So there's that side of me. I could say I'm a dear, Socceroo fan, but at the same time, like many football soccer fans around the world who have a background, an immigrant background, you also support your national team of your descent, your heritage. And so supporting Chile wasn't really common growing up. And we'll touch on that because there was a ban. So they were banned from international football. So that's pretty much how it comes as a goalkeeper, youth, seniors, yeah, more in the lower divisions, semi-professional kind of division where you've got a day job and you also play. Um, I did have a brief stint in the professional game as well. And very early, very young, 26, 25, 26, I hung up my gloves more so than my boots and took up coaching. And yeah, it's a bit exhausting. I think it's not for everybody, but it is. It's a tough gig, and you learn a lot about the game. So yeah, no, I've also been involved in media and communications. I think probably my highlight has been covering the Asian Cup, the AFC Asian Cup, the AFC Champions League, the Asian Cup, definitely. So yeah, not only am I big on the South American game, big on the Chilean game, I've also been an avid follower of the Asian game. Um, Obviously, it's got to do with the 2005 transition of Australia into the AFC. So, and it's interesting with this match that we're covering because it does also entail a tour across Asia and Oceania for the Chilean national side, which I happened to be I went to that game in Melbourne, but yeah, we'll go in more detail as we bit by bit.
Before we discuss the England Chile match of February 1998, can you give an overview of the state of the Chilean national team in these early and mid 1990s?
I think that's an excellent question, and if you direct this question to other Chileans, I think you would get a variety of explanations, but with the same answer. And all the answers go back to the ban. You may think, why did Chile get banned? Well, it was a period where FIFA banned two national teams. Yugoslavia purely on a political basis because of the disintegration of Yugoslavia, and Marshal Tito. So, I mean, if you think about it in football terms, if it remained a country, just how good that national team would remain. We think of the success of Croatia, just how Yugoslavia would have been with all the other nations. So that disintegration was one ban, and the other ban was Chile because of the 1989 Maracanazo incident as a qualifier. Back then in South America, CONMEBOL had two groups, Group A and B, two groups of five. It wasn't a round robin. It wasn't everyone against everyone. It wasn't a 10-team round robin. And Chile had the misfortune of being drawn in 1989 with Brazil. And you think of Tafarel, Branco. You think of a young Dunga, Bebeto, Romario,
of course.
And others, Careca as well. So a very decent team, and obviously they were favourites to qualify. What happened? Chile had such a brilliant goalkeeper by the name of Roberto Rojas, who was at the time in 1999 being, if you could say, scouted, or however the scouting practice was in those days. He was kept under a close eye at Real Madrid because of his performances. He was, funnily enough, he was playing in Brazil for club giant Sao Paulo, and this was the qualifier against Brazil. And he planned, and you could think of probably the most macabre kind of series, like, I don't know, Breaking Bad or something like that. It's very dark what happened, because he organized contraband fireworks with a select, few individuals, so to bring the game into disrepute, bring the game to a halt, suspend the match. This was the second leg. The first leg was a controversial draw in Santiago, which was more like a wrestling match. It was very physical and very violent, but 1-1, Romario on the score sheet. So all to play for the Maracanã, and it was only 1-0 at the time for Brazil, with Rojas pulling off these amazing saves. It would have been 4-0 easy. Incredible saves. And then all of a sudden, deep into the second half, you see a flare thrown to his face. Well, presumably, what you as a viewer, what you thought was a flare to his face. Game gets cancelled. He gets stretchered off, bleeding. And about a week or two later, he confesses to having, organized this plot. The bleeding was provoked. Was provoked by himself. So self-inflicted with a blade, shoved inside his glove. He cut his eyebrow. And there were photographers, especially one photographer, who revealed, back then there were no social media or smartphones, so you had to develop the film, and you could see the flare was about a meter away from him. And so that sparked huge controversy in Chile, with people attacking the Brazilian embassy. The Chilean media that were present in Rio at the Maracanã got physically assaulted by Brazilian fans. There was a diplomatic tussle between the two countries, because here we're talking about Brazil not going to a World Cup, on disciplinary measures. And FIFA immediately stepped in, formed an inquiry and investigated and got all the evidence, and they found that this was provoked. So Rojas got a life ban and Chile got a ban for 4 years, including the USA 94 World Cup. So excluded from the qualifiers. It was a deep blow because Chile had an up-and-coming generation of top talent, including, La Liga's Pichichi, or top goal scorer in 1995, Ivan Zamorano. So honestly, a lot of us Chilean fans and journalists and ex-players think that Chile could have well qualified to the USA '94 World Cup had it not been for the ban. There was a decent team, but anyway, you can't go through those ifs and what ifs because it was not to be, and it was a funny period, funny decade, and I'm thankful for your question because domestically at club level, the Chilean league signed some incredible talent, players direct from Europe, from the Serie A, from the Bundesliga, from Argentina. We had players from in the Argentinian national team, Ecuadorian, Bolivian national team, played World Cups, playing in the first division in Chile. So it was top quality, first class internationals playing in Chile. There were big bucks as well, and I think that was due to two reasons: the ban, and also the fact that the Copa America 1991 was hosted by Chile.
It's at this point that Marcelo Salas emerges. Can you describe the early stages of his career at Universidad de Chile?
He was amazing. He just erupted out of nowhere. Comes from the southern city, Temuco, with a heavy indigenous Mapuche population. In fact, he is half from Mum, which explains a lot of his character on the field. His warrior-like demeanor. And there's a popular myth in Chilean society that Salas went to trial at Colo-Colo, the Giants, and got overlooked. And that was a telling point for him. I mean, he was only a 14, 15-year-old kid at the time, scoring goals for fun in his local city. And his coach, his junior coach, his youth coach at a local amateur team, and a lot of people were saying, you've got to try your luck in the capital city again. Don't be disheartened by what happened at Colo-Colo. They overlooked, they shut the doors on you, and that fueled a lot of revenge for him, for a very young Marcelo. Goes back and trials with rivals Universidad de Chile, and on the second day of him trialing, he was approached formally to, not only as a kid. I mean, he's not 18 at the time. You need to be 18. He was approached. His parents were approached, and they were asked kindly if there was any way for him to move to Santiago and board at the club. There were some accommodation facilities for him to stay and just properly nurture him, in football terms, get him to play in the 15s and 16s. And by 16, he turning 17, he made his first team debut under coach Jorge Lulo Socias, a former player, in the cup, in the domestic cup. It was 1994, again, same year as the USA World Cup. And he just had this killer instinct. And at the time, a famous Argentinian rock ska ensemble band, Los Fabulosos Cadillacs, had a hit, a radio hit called Matador, the Killer. And so, yeah, there's still a bit of a tussle between who came up with his nickname, but it definitely matched with the song that was a hit at the time, because he was just a killer, in the 6-yard, 18-yard box. His first touch was impeccable. 16-year-old kid making his debut. It's a change. You're 15, 16 years old. You make your transition to senior football, and the football's different. It's more physical. There's more shoulder barging. It's different. No matter if you're scoring for fun in the youth, it's different to seniors. But he made it look so easy. He made the difficult things of a striker, of a forward, look so easy. I don't remember exactly how many goals he scored on his debut. I do remember he scored one, probably scored a double. But in the cup, he was impressing, and it didn't take long, about 3 weeks, for him to be a regular in the league. And that same year, remember, Argentina got thumped by Colombia in Buenos Aires 5-0 in the qualifiers. They had to go through an intercontinental playoff against Australia, and they drew 1-1 in Sydney. They won 1-0 in Buenos Aires, with marking the return of Diego Maradona. And in that interim period between November and June, just before the World Cup in the US beginning, Argentina played a friendly in Santiago on a very cold night against Chile, and that marked Salas's full senior debut. It was a 3-3 draw, with Salas scoring 2 goals. A very young 18-year-old Salas. Yeah. So that period, I think he just, I mean, it was a question of time when, he was moving abroad. It wasn't a question of, is he capable? Everybody, he generated a sense of fear for rivals. He scored in the 2 clásicos, 2 derbies, against Colo-Colo, against Universidad Católica, scored in Libertadores. In 1996, Universidad de Chile had a very competitive side under Miguel Ángel Russo, Argentinian, who also managed at Boca Juniors, amongst others. And they reached the semifinals against River Plate. And that game, to this day, is highly controversial because there were some refereeing decisions that didn't go their way. If you look at it now, there were some clear penalties that, were turned a blind eye. So I think that team, justifiably speaking, should have made the final. But anyway, you can't go back. But that team was also the backbone of the Chile team, on its way to France 98 in the qualifiers. So Salas had that advantage of having played with 5-6 other players from his side at La U in the national team, and also he was voted South American Player of the Year in 97, and that subsequently, and that sparked a lot of interest across the border in Argentina, with Boca and River, the 2 arch rivals, interested in signing him. So that period at La U was very successful. I don't have the numbers with me, but he just erupted. This young kid with playing like as if he'd been playing for 10 seasons in first grade football. And there's also a few rumors, over the years. Boca Juniors were very, very, very close, inches from signing him. The manager, Hector Bambino Vieira, and Carlos Vilardo, they were at the club, World Cup winner Vilardo, and they were very interested. They sat and negotiated with him and his agent, and the real reasons will not be revealed, but something happened during the negotiations that, River Plate, I think they sent somebody, staff, to spy at the hotel, at the lobby, where a meeting with a cup of coffee, and during a break, maybe a toilet or coffee break, this individual approaches Salas's agent and he says, "Look, we're from River Plate. We can double the deal. Whatever Boca offers, we'll double it." And during that same meeting, the Boca officials return empty-handed, shocked, angry. So that goes to show the rivalry between Boca and River, even at a business deal. And the next day, the media in Argentina were expectant for Salas to turn up in a Boca shirt, and then the following day he turns up at a press conference with a River shirt.
Yes. And he was signed to replace the Parma-bound Hernan Crespo. What was his the River Plate stage of his career like?
Very successful, as you say. Big shoes to fill because Crespo had been shining at the Libertadores 1996, which they won. Football fans can remember their showing in Japan against Juventus. Amazing side. If you've got Marcelo Gallardo, Ariel Ortega, Enzo Francescoli, Crespo up front. Crespo, especially with his height, was very good in the air, very good header, a very clinical finisher. But Salas immediately won the hearts and minds of fans, mind you, in Argentina. I mean, football in Argentina is religion. It means everything in Argentina, and the River fans were very high in demand, and they immediately, instantly fell in love with Salas. Mind you, historically, you could say only one Chilean was successful in Argentina, but we're talking in the 1940s and 50s, by the name of Sergio Livingston, grandchild of one of the founders of the Chilean game. So he had a Scottish background from his grandpa and great-grandfather. He was a famous goalkeeper, played in the 1950 World Cup. He was captain at Racing. But from the 50s to the 90s, it's well over 40 years where Argentina never saw a Chilean succeed in domestic club football. So the press and fans were like, they were very demanding of Salas because of his goals in the Libertadores and for La U. And what made Salas fall in love with River fans was the fact that he was not only a quality finisher, but he was a very good dribbler. So he would drop back and help the midfield. Well, I mean, if you've got a midfielder, Leonardo Estrada, Roberto Montserrat, Francesco Ortega, and Gallardo, I mean, I think you would fit in really well. But that's what really captured. And he scored like any world-class striker. He scored goals in the most important moments. I mean, even on debut, at La Bombonera, he scored for River against Boca. And that is a rite of passage. That is, you're pretty much, scoring for River Plate against Boca, your name is in history at the club. And I guess having arrived to replace Crespo was fitting for Salas because he was also one of the top scorers, in fact, the top scorer in the South American World Cup qualifying for France, and at River Plate, and playing Libertadores, and also winning the old Super Cup, the champions of the Libertadores and the Supercopa, beating Sao Paulo. So he scored goals in important matches and also winning league titles as well. And in 97, he won the South American Player of the Year. So it was a question of time whether he would sign in Spain or in Italy. And yeah, so once Chile qualified on the last match day, November 1997, defeating Bolivia 3-0 under the presence of no other than Manchester United former manager Alex Ferguson, or Sir Alex Ferguson, in the stands. He scored. He scored one. He scored
Yes.
one. Set up one as well. But Rodrigo Barrera and Juan Carreño, the other scorers. And it was a strange kickoff time. It was during the day, early in the afternoon. Chile hosted night matches. And during that time, it was a strong rumor he was either going to Man United. Something happened, I see a lot of decisions behind four walls don't end up being revealed. Something happened, and it was Italy, the destination, but there was still no club putting their hand up for his signature. And Chile, the federation, this was a golden period for the federation. Now this was the opposite, because the Chilean federation at the time used to, back in the day, we used to use fax machines, not emails. The Chilean federation would fax the French federation, the Mexican, the Spanish for friendlies. Whereas now, as Chile was qualified to gain qualification to the France World Cup, it was the other way around. Other national teams were faxing Chile for friendlies. So it was, a kind of a golden period. And I remember in '96 playing against Australia in Antofagasta. Salas got on the score sheet. There was a number of friendlies designed to prepare themselves for qualification, where there were two coaches in the process. One got sacked, Javier Azcargorta from Spain. And upon gaining qualification, there were a number of friendlies. Two organized in France against fellow qualifiers Morocco and Tunisia. And what we just mentioned earlier in this show, a tour of Hong Kong, playing the Carlsberg Cup against Iran, hosts Hong Kong, but it wasn't the Hong Kong national team. It was a first
Hong
11
Kong 11, yeah. Hong Kong 11.
Yeah. League, and also against Bora Milutinovic in Nigeria, a 14 Cup, and then Auckland against New Zealand and Australia, where Australia was battered and bruised heavily after a couple of months ago, were left stunned and shocked after, from elimination, losing to Iran. Well, actually, in fact, for the record, drawing 2-2 at home, but going out on the away goals rule. So that tour for Chile was decisive. The manager, Uruguayan-born Nelson Acosta, decided to really impose as a manager, because the side was still going through some disciplinary problems. Players who like to, run away, escape from the team hotel, and go and party. Kind of things that you should. You're old enough to be able to restrain yourself, but no, something that happens with South American sides, in discipline. And he really shook the table really firm and said, if you guys want to go out and party and stuff up during this tour, let me know now. We'll all go and party, and we'll call the tour off, and I'll send other players to the World Cup. Your spot at a World Cup is on the line here. So if you're serious about going to a World Cup, behave. So he put a warning sign for everybody, and that tour was, I guess, it was very important, really important. It turned out important because there were 3 players who were not considered in the first 11 during qualifiers, and had it not been for this tour in Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, and in England, had they not performed well in the tour, I guarantee they would not have gone to France to the World Cup.
We have to mention that in this qualifiers, Salas scored 11 goals that included 2 hat-tricks against Colombia and Peru. Incidentally, due to injuries, he only managed to partner Zamorano only on 5 occasions in these qualifiers. And let's remember that this is the first time where you have, like you mentioned, the entire South American nations in a round robin. So the qualification process was it took more than a year. It started like April of '96 until November of '97. So
That's
this is
right, almost.
Yeah. Well, and this was the first time.
Years.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the first time where this method of qualification we used, which is now the norm today. You mentioned a few times that he was elected as the South American Player of the Year by El País at the end of the year 1997. Now, before the match against England, it's this is when we hear that on February 1st, in fact, we get the news that he is signed for Lazio for the following season. How was that taken at the time?
Um, the initial reaction was of surprise. Why? Because Lazio was not a side that was winning titles in Italy. I mean, this is the golden period of Italian club football. You think of the 90s and it's Arrigo Sacchi, um, Fabio Capello and Milan, especially Milan, Juventus. So Lazio wasn't the side that was winning titles. However, off the field, they were bought by two particular um, businessmen who looked to grow the brand of Lazio, and they brought Swedish manager Sven-Goran Eriksson, and they ended up building quite a formidable squad. You know, since Salas arrived, Christian Bieri, Roberto Mancini, you know, Sergio Conceição, Portugal, Nestor Sensini at the back, Juan Sebastian Verón, Matias Almeida. We're talking world-class players. But at the time they weren't signed. They were arriving at Lazio season just after the France World Cup in '99, heading into 2000. Salas was one of the first arrivals, so it was a gamble. It was a big gamble. It wasn't, Salas arriving to Milan or Juventus. However, 98 and 99, 2000, they started to show some intent. They did reach the UEFA Cup final, losing to Inter, where, Ivan Zamorano got on the score sheet along with Ronaldo. That final was played in Paris at the Parc des Princes, UEFA Cup final, the old UEFA Cup final. So his arrival to Lazio was taken by surprise.
We come to this match on February 11 at Wembley. Now, let's go through the lineups, and let's start with the hosts, England. And this match was at the time actually billed as the debut for Liverpool's wonder boy, Michael Owen. So that's where most of the headlines were. So England were managed by Glenn Hoddle, who had qualified for the World Cup as well. But from the initial squad, some players had to withdraw due to injuries, like Tim Flowers, Andy Hinchcliffe, Keown, David Beckham, Andy Cole, and Les Ferdinand, among others. This is the squad selected by Glenn Hoddle. In goal, we have Nigel Martin of Leeds, Gary Neville of Manchester United, Sol Campbell of Tottenham, Tony Adams, captain of the side from Arsenal, Phil Neville of Manchester United. He'd be replaced by Graham Lasaw of Chelsea in the second half. Dion Dublin of Coventry City, also making his debut. David Batty of Newcastle. He'd be replaced by Paul Ince of Liverpool in the 63rd minute. Nicky Butt of Manchester United. Robert Lee of Newcastle. Teddy Sheringham of Manchester United. He'd be replaced by Alan Shearer of Newcastle in the 63rd minute. And Michael Owen of Liverpool. And we have to mention Alan Shearer himself had been injured for most of the season, and he was just making his return to the team. We should also mention that the day before, the respective B-sides also played the match against one another, and Chile won 2-1 in that match. But for this match, the main national team, we have the following side for Chile. Nelson Tapia of Universidad Católica, Moises Villarroel of Santiago Wanderers, Pedro Reyes of Colo Colo, Ronald Fuentes of Universidad de Chile, Javier Margas of Universidad Católica, Francisco Rojas of Colo Colo, Nelson Paraguez of Universidad Católica, Clarence Acuna of Universidad de Chile, Jose Luis Sierra of Colo Colo. He'd be replaced by Rodrigo Valenzuela, who's playing at Club America in Mexico in the 88th minute. Rodrigo Barrera of Universidad de Chile. He'd be replaced by Juan Carreno of Huachipato in the 77th minute, and captaining the side, Marcelo Salas of River Plate of Argentina.
Yeah, three things before getting to that amazing goal. First, the long hour flight from Chile for the Chilean side, from having played Australia with a 1-0 win, thanks to Clarence Acuna, which there's another highlight to note of Acuna and Margas that we'll mention later. So he scored 1-0 from Melbourne. There's a 20-plus hour flight to London. And upon arriving in London at Heathrow, Zamorano travels from Italy. He was at Inter Milan, and three things heading into this match. Zamorano was in doubt. He picked up an injury, so he wasn't given the all clear to play. Two, the long flight from Australia, so jet lag from the players. And three, back home in Santiago, pop Irish band U2 were in concert. And for many, they were at the National Stadium for the concert. They had to decide, when you go to a nightclub or you go to a concert, but you've got something, or you've got a football match, and it's like, I can't stay because I've got something else on. Maybe you've got a birthday, you've got a wedding or a baptism, and you go, but you leave at halftime, something like that. A lot of the fans went to the concert and were stuck between, do we stay for the concert, or do we go home to watch this friendly against England live? And what did U2, what did Bono and company do? They came out in the red shirt, the national jersey, and they broadcast the key highlights of the match on the giant screen during the concert. So kickoff, the image came up on the screen, and I mean, you can imagine the rapturous reaction by the crowd. And it gets to the 45th minute, and you can see that England is attacking. I think it was a throw-in or a corner, and there's a clearance by, I think it was Javier Margas or Ronald Fuentes at the back, probably Pedro Reyes. Three. There were Acosta would play with three stoppers, very old-fashioned three stoppers, and he used the wing back. So the right back was Moises Villarroel and Francisco Rojas on the left. So it was more of a 5-3-2 formation. And it was a quick transition. Ball lands to Clarence Acuna, and Acuna in his football was Acuna is very good with his distribution, his passing. He would make 60 passes and 59 of them would be successful. And he makes a quick change to playmaker Jose Luis Goto Sierra, who had spent some time at Sao Paulo in Brazil at the time. Later on, went to play in Mexico, and he sends almost like a golf range, drive. It's just a very, very accurate 35-meter long pass to the backs of David Batty, Tony Adams, and Sol Campbell, who were rushing back. England were attacking, so these defenders were going for the header. They had to rush back, and they were caught off guard. Salas controls it with his left thigh, and without the ball bouncing on the full, volleys it straight home past Nigel Martin. Many to this day agree it's the finest goal scored under the Twin Towers, or the old Twin Towers of the old Wembley Stadium. the crowd was just shocked. The crowd was shocked, in disbelief, disappointed with England's performance so far in the first half, but also already giving Salas a standing ovation. And if you listen to the words by match commentator Martin Tyler, he was arguing and backing up as to why Lazio forked out the money that they put for his signature. This match was sort of like, it was a showcase friendly match for Salas to prove the world, or especially Europe, who he is, what is he about, and what can he do.
Introducing himself to the European football crowd, essentially.
That's right, and right before halftime, and as you know, conceding just before halftime unsettles you. You're 1-0 down, on the break. To this day, when you hit the replay button and you see that goal, you still wonder how on earth did he manage to have his back to goal, receive that, pinpoint pass from 35 meters with two defenders on you at that speed, able to turn 45 degrees, so half your body, you've got half your back to the goal, your other half you're facing goal. I think I don't know. I don't think, because your natural reaction would be to probably hit the ball, but you'd hit it from 10-15 meters, not from 35.
Yeah, just how hard it is to control it from that range and distance.
Well, you see it in Brazil at the World Cup 2014, Robin van Persie for Holland, similar cross, and he headers it. But right. Salas controls it with his left thigh and hits it straight away. It caught everyone off guard. And Salas's personality as well, he's very reserved. He's very shy with the cameras, with the media. I don't think he's talked much about the goal. He's described the emotion, but I don't think he's done a description or a run through of technically how he did it, how he scored. I'm not a striker. I was a goalkeeper. I can tell you strikers who can finish like that. They just do it. It's a matter of seconds. It's adrenaline. It's a variety of emotions. There's hours and hours and hours of training. When you ask them how do you do that, they say I don't know. It just happens. It's just a natural quick 2, 3, 4, 5 second movement reaction. And it's a splendid goal. It's a splendid goal. Brilliant goal. Yeah, it wasn't finished. So halftime and into the second half. By then he really took the mickey out of, for a better word, out of Sol Campbell. He was having a nightmare. The then Arsenal defender, yeah, at the time. He later switched allegiances to Tottenham. And I'm glad you pointed out the fact that this was Michael Owen's debut. This match was more for Michael Owen, and Salas stole the headlines. Zamorano did not play. I think Zamorano and Salas together would have been a very interesting match at Wembley together. But I think Chile won this match mainly on a good defense on the night, and also with the 3 stoppers. And Sierra and Salas's individual brilliance. They were able to finish the match. The second goal from a penalty, completely exposing Sol Campbell. And it's funny because after that match, I mean, not only the disbelief and the joy back home in Chile, and the U2 concert, after full time, the concert continued, and just a general reaction in the media, because South Americans have this inferiority complex with the British. They look at particularly the English, as semi-gods, because of history in general. They struggle with self-belief, and I think that's what one of the players in the B side the night before in Birmingham at the Hawthorns, West Brom, Marcelo Peña, who happens to be, like myself, a Chilean, an Australian Chilean. He spoken to me about that match, and has said that that was a general feeling in the dressing room. It's like, we're playing England. We don't have much of a chance tonight. And, he broke out, before the match and said, we do have a chance. Let's not approach this match like that. We haven't even started. We can beat these guys. We can give them a good run for their money, and they did. It was a 2-1 win in the B side match, the B friendly. So I guess, that's topic for another conversation, particularly with the arrival years later of Marcelo Bielsa as manager, because I think the Chilean game, particularly in the 90s, had nothing to. Was nothing short. It wasn't. It was good football. Technically speaking, it was very competitive. It was good football, but the psychology, the mentality was still. I don't know. We're playing Argentina. Let's settle for a draw. We're playing England, and also another point to highlight: in 1989, Chile also played England at Wembley, and it was, according to many, first of all, one of the lowest crowds in attendance for any England match at Wembley, but for many England fans, one of the worst matches of their lives. It was one of the most dull, boring, nil-all draws you could ever see. So Chile didn't have that much expectation heading into this friendly in 1998 in February because of their performance, 11 years before.
9 years, yeah.
9 years before, yeah.
Well, in short, this match against England was a career-defining moment and performance from Salas. You can say. From
Salas, he goes on to join his teammates after the World Cup in France. He scores 4 goals. Remember, Chile lose to eventual runners-up Brazil 4-1 in the round of 16. So 4 matches in France, 4 goals. And Salas integrates to the squad in Rome and has a rather good first season, scoring as well. In his second season, he also performs a lot better, settles in. It's not easy to settle in Italy. It's much more tactical. And Lazio also begin to conquer Italy with the arrivals of all the names that we mentioned earlier, and also defeating Man United in the Super Cup after winning the Cup Winners' Cup.
Cup Winners' Cup, the very last Cup Winners' Cup, yeah.
Yeah. Now today we've got the Europa League and the Conference League. So he settles in very well. Also in his private life, he marries the niece of a former player, a former Colo-Colo player. So yeah, he's also, happy in his personal life, moved to Italy, becomes a father, and fans in Argentina are like, especially River fans, they were crying for his return. They wanted it back. After the France World Cup, Chile struggle. They struggle. Acosta resigns. Some new faces, erupt. 2000, the Chilean national team hit an all-time low in qualifiers, second last and bottom in the group. But with a bit of ray of hope, as Salas says no and turns his back to the Olympics in Sydney in Australia, and Zamorano in turn puts his hand up and says, "Yep, I'll play in the under-23 tournament, which has a +3 overage rule." So from that team, Tapia in goals, Pedro Reyes in defense, and Zamorano join to strengthen the under-23 side. And also from this friendly against England, Margas and Acuna end up playing in the Premier League after their performances at the World Cup. Obviously, England, very, I guess, very well developed, even in the 90s, with player scouts. Acuna ends up signing for Newcastle, so he becomes a Magpie, plays, I don't remember, 5 seasons, probably 4 or 5 seasons. He connects really well with Norberto Solano, the Peruvian fullback. And Margas, that's another story, because where I live here in Chile, Margas is a businessman, very successful businessman. He bought airplanes, so he's bought Boeing jets, obviously from the money he made at West Ham, and he's made these airplanes like a concept, like accommodation motel. So yeah, a bit of an exotic, experimental kind of a business project that he has, and also he's invested heavily in property and the property market. But he did something really silly at West Ham, where manager Harry Redknapp spoke years later on radio, and FM radio, saying that the most bizarre player he had was Margas, because for months he struggled to settle in England, life in England, settle in the squad, made some key performances, especially in the FA Cup, played with dyed hair as well. But his wife just did not settle to England, and his wife insisted, let's leave, let's go, let's leave England. And they're in the hotel, team hotel, before a league match, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. The West Ham squad is ready to have breakfast, Redknapp says, and Margas is missing. He just escapes out of a window with his passport and his wife, and he just left everything. Contracts, everything. He just left England. So not a good impression there. Despite impressing in this friendly against England and at the World Cup.
The rest of the career of Salas is not as successful. He joins Juventus in 2001, but this is where the serious injuries start. Can you describe this latter phase of his career?
It's a common topic for many, because you wonder, what if he didn't get the injury? What if he didn't pick up that knee injury, especially with Juventus? He does very well, very, very well for Lazio. And right to Turin, there's also a story. He was very close to not signing for Juventus. He was this close to signing for Barcelona. And Barcelona were interested. Barcelona had just sold Luis Figo to Real Madrid, and they were looking at David Beckham. Something happens, and the deal doesn't go through. Barcelona were also after Marc Viduka and Salas. It collapsed, and it fell, and he signs for Juventus. He scores at Juventus. He plays well. He does well. But as you say, that knee injury, a lot of players never return the same. They don't return the same again. and you could tell when you watch him play, he doesn't. He had a knack for receiving the ball with his back to goal. With his first touch with his left. After the injury, he tried to avoid that particular movement, and he would always charge his body to the right, to control with the right, and then play with his left. And that's purely on the injury. So yeah, it's he doesn't. I mean, he set the bar high himself. So yeah, with that injury at Juventus, he doesn't he doesn't replicate what he did. He moves to Juventus along with Pavel Nedved. And you're playing with Trezeguet, you're playing with Buffon, Del Piero, but Zidane, but he doesn't. He doesn't score the same. Doesn't score the same amount of goals like he did at Lazio.
And he's eventually loaned out to River Plate and Universidad de Chile. And in fact, he joins Universidad de Chile outright in 2006. Retires in 2008, I believe, age 33.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, he moves to Juventus for 26 million euros. If I'm not mistaken, against Bologna, he picks up the injury. So struggling for confidence as well. I think his move back to River Plate was a really good move. He's back at the club where he most, succeeds. I mean, he's to this day, if you go to River Plate and you're Chilean, I mean, he opened the doors for fellow Chileans to play at River Plate, like Alexis Sanchez, like defender Paulo Diaz, who's now at River Plate. There's a number of Chileans who've played at River Plate. And that side in 2004, they lose the Copa Sudamericana final, surprisingly, to Cienciano of Cusco, of Peru. 3-3 draw in the first leg. And they lose that cup final. But they reach the semifinals of the 2005 Libertadores. Salas scores a hat trick in the round of 16 against Liga de Quito, and again River Plate that season managed to assemble a pretty good squad. Cavenaghi up front, Mascherano in his early years before moving to Europe, Maxi Lopez, Lucho Gonzalez before moving to Europe, Marcelo Gallardo also having successfully played at Monaco in France, returning. So it was a competitive side, but you would think now Salas's time at Juventus was disappointing, not on the field, but just in terms of numbers. He didn't score as much as Lazio. When at Lazio, because of an injury, he just wasn't the same. In his final years, he also completed his desire, as promised, to return to La U. Universidad de Chile are marred with this, I would say, trauma from 2000, 2001. They are yet to beat Colo-Colo away at Colo-Colo. So it's one of the most one-sided derbies in world football. Colo-Colo continue to win at home. And he was there for that was during his first stint where he did score. He scored a number of goals against Colo-Colo and won one of these derbies away. He not even with Salas, La U failed to defeat Colo-Colo at the Monumental. So that was also a disappointment for Salas because, fans expected, they were very close to beating Colo-Colo. They would expect that with the arrival of Salas, they would break that hoodoo, that bad luck. But they didn't. And there's also a very telling penalty shootout in 2006 at the Nacional League final against Colo-Colo, which catapulted Claudio Bravo, the goalkeeper for Colo-Colo. An epic shootout. Salah scores in the shootout, but a number of national team players playing for Universidad de Chile, for La U, have their penalty missed, all saved by Bravo. So you picture a cauldron, 60, 65, 70,000 fans, all down to penalties, right down to the wire. So, yeah, he was there. And also he organized his farewell, I remember, in 2009, with a host of big names. Paulo Montero, Enzo Francescoli, David Trezeguet, Ariel Ortega, Sierra, who plays that beautiful pass at Wembley, Leonardo Rodriguez, former Argentinian number 10, Zamorano also. He's good friends with Eduardo Berizzo, the current national team manager. So, and to this day, I mean, when he goes to Argentina, goes to River Plate, he's always received with open arms.
So, in closing, from a Chilean football historical standpoint, is this match still referenced and remembered due to Salas's performance?
Absolutely. In 2013, just before the Brazil World Cup in 2014, which Chile qualifies with under Jorge Sampaoli, they play England again, this time at the new Wembley. And it was a 2-1 win for Chile, a double by Alexis Sanchez, who Alexis admits Salas was his childhood hero, his idol. And that match also, I mean, that resembles the previous one in 1998. Salas was at the match as well. He was presented with a plaque, with a memento, and a signed jersey for the match. Yes, I would say that match marked a before and after, especially because in 98, Chile had not qualified to the round of 16. Well, they had not qualified to a World Cup since 82, Spain 82, and had not reached the final round of 16 since hosting in 1962. So that's, if my maths do me right,
36 years.
36 years, yeah. So it's a long time. And a year later, the Copa America 99 was hosted in Paraguay, and Chile reaches the semis with Salas and Zamorano. And I think Salas picks up an injury as well. So performances improve. Chile performed really well in the 91 Copa America. And after that, it was a case of underperforming with a good side, a good generation, but just not understanding the message of the managers. And there were also administration problems. They also had Mirko Josic as manager, a Croatian who took Colo-Colo the Copa Libertadores title in 91. But the playing group didn't really understand. The playing group, I guess Salas, both, as you mentioned, only 5 matches in qualifying, Salas and Zamorano together, helped the playing group gain this confidence, because it was a very talented generation, but there was nobody to score the goals. You know, good football, good possession football, but there was nobody there to put it away. Or Zamorano would play by himself, frustrated, or Salas would play by himself. But when the two paired together, they just gelled together. So yes, the friendly in Wembley, even though Zamorano was absent, marked the before and after. Definitely, it changed the mentality, the psychology of the Chilean football player, and not to forget, Salas or Zamorano opened doors for Chileans in Europe, especially in Spain and Italy, and Salas as well. Over those years, the late 90s and early 2000s, a number of Chileans make their move via Mexico or Argentina to the Italian Serie A. So yes, it also marked the before and after for the national team, but it also opened doors for transfers. Yep, definitely.
So with that, I'd like to thank you for this interview.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I would like to urge everyone to please read the main blog article as well for more detail. The link is included in the video upload description, along with our respective contact informations. So thank you again, and hope for more Chile-related discussions in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think there's plenty to touch base on, but I'm glad for this invitation. Thank you very much. And I think especially with football so globalized, I think the two World Cups that really, mark this globalization process is the USA 94, the France 98, and the Korea Japan 02 World Cups, where we're seeing national teams from the more lesser traditional continents qualify and make their move to Europe. And definitely, if you ask anybody around the world of the Chilean national team those years, it's Marcelo Salas and Ivan Zamorano. And also at the same time, tennis sensation Marcelo Rios reaching number one in the ATP circuit. So the three key sports people who put the country on the map, on the world map. So thank you very much for this very insightful and fun, conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again.